Thanks for the wonderful prayer that you gave Speaker Pro Tem Lois DeBerry. In 1980, I ran for the State House and was elected. One of the first people I met when I went to Nashville was this lady who had a tremendous voice, an eagerness and an earnestness to be sure that she got her message across in a delightful way. And this morning with her prayer, and always when she addresses those of us who are Democrats, Independents, and are Republicans in this state, she's always talking about the need for those who are less fortunate to be sure that they too share in the greatness of this wonderful nation that we live in. I look around and see several of my Democrat friends. So where did I see Joe Armstrong someplace a moment ago as well? Hiding in the back up in Knoxville. One of the few Democrats we still have elected up in East Tennessee. You know, I hear a lot of, and there's something else I want to say. To the Democrat organization in Tennessee, this has probably been one of the best organized and the most informative. I get probably 3 or 4 emails every day about what's going on, what will be happening at the convention, the schedule that we're having. Any questions you may have, give us a call. So to all those folks who work in the organization in Nashville that has put together these events that we will be having this week, thanks for the hard work that you've done as well. I hear questions being asked by folks in the media. I think many times they're prodded by the Republicans and by the right-wing folks on the far right. The questions that they should be asking those of us who are Democrats. And someone asked me the other day, are we better off than we were 4 years ago? I said, sure we are. Osama bin Laden's not, though. GM is alive. Ford is alive, and Chrysler's alive, and those 3-point-something million people who work in that industry today still hold a job because the president went out on the limb and was sure that the bridge loans were there, that funding was available to keep that industry, which has driven America's economy since the 30s and 40s and helped win the war in the 40s, stay alive in this nation. We didn't yield that to the Chinese. We didn't yield that to Asia. We saved it for America. Yes, we're better off if you work in that industry. There's something else that we're better off, and we need to start answering these questions correctly. If you owned a home and about to lose it, you're better off. Now, some folks lost their home. They probably aren't better off. I'm not saying everyone fits that category. But if you own a home and were able to refinance it at a much lower interest rate, and today are able to pay for it, you're better off. If you were unemployed, one of those 8 million people who were unemployed starting in January of 2008, the last year President Bush was in office, and the first 9 months of the Obama administration, 8 million jobs were lost. If you've been able to get a job back, you're better off. And for the 2.5 years that funding was provided for unemployment compensation to help you pay for insurance for you and your children, to help you be able to make the house payment, you were better off during those 2.5 years. The last 1.5 years, the last 2 years, are you better off? No, because the Republicans wouldn't renew that. So because of that, you may not be better off, but those who because of the recovery package that passed, you're better off as a result. We need to start answering the question correctly. You're better off if you fear and had a fear of the terrorists that might attack or have been attacking this country. Because if you're in Pakistan and you are a Taliban leader or an Al-Qaeda leader, you fear the drones that are flying overhead. And the attacks that this president has doubled up on without permission from the Pakistani government. I remember the former president said, we're going to come after those who harm this nation, who attack this nation, and we're going to, those countries who are harboring you, we will either attack them or they will yield you over to us. But yet almost every attack that was made in Pakistan during the last administration had an approval from the Pakistani government. In the areas of Tora Bora, in the areas of Waziristan, south and north. Do you know what this president did? When he was running, he said, we will follow them in hot pursuit across the border into any country if they've done harm or threatened to do harm to this country. And almost over half of the attacks that we've had in this country, the drone attacks, some folks may not agree with that, but I'm just saying those attacks have been taking out Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban leaders. You're not better off if you're one of those, because this president has come after you, as the former president told us he was going to do. This one has done exactly that. So what I say to you today is that GM, Ford, and Chrysler are still alive, and Osama bin Laden is definitely dead. Even though some folks may want to question that. I think this election cycle that we're in today pivots on two different issues, or two different concerns, or two different statements that I can make. Anger is one, and fear is the other. Let me describe what I mean by that. 2 years ago, this country was angry. Many independents were angry and joined those who were on the far right in provoking that anger. And as a result of that, there were many of us who served in public office, many state House members, state Senate members, as well as those of us who served in Congress, and those who were governors of states, were kicked out of office as a result of the anger, and people who followed that line of thought, especially from those who call themselves Tea Party folks. That anger did prevail, and as a result, many lost the positions they had. Is there anger still today? Sure there is. But I think the overriding factor in this election cycle is fear. Fear of going back to where we were 4 years ago. Fear of what the Obama and Ryan administration will do to America. Fear that we may lose our Social Security. Even Ronald Reagan in 1983 realized that we had to fix Social Security. Although the far right, the conservatives for years have been talking about doing away with and privatizing Social Security. Reagan himself, the largest tax increase on working families in the history of this country occurred during the Reagan administration. Went from 10 point to 4 point to 12.2% you pay in withholding. Half of that being employee and half for you. But if you are self-employed, all that 12.4% comes directly from your pay. That was increased by over 2%. We built a surplus of $2.5 trillion as a result of that legislation that Ronald Reagan, the conservative. I'm not bragging, I'm just saying he understood that Social Security was something that we had to save. It was a commitment that we made. It is the only defined benefit that people who are minimum wage or those who work just above minimum wage have that they can depend upon when they get ready not to retire, because many have to still work after they start drawing their Social Security check. Even Reagan realized that the defined benefit package of Social Security is the only thing that provides hope for most people who live, quite frankly, in Tennessee. In the district I represented, 60% of the people who lived in that district lived in a household that earned less than $40,000 a year. They don't have a retirement package. They don't have a 401k. They're just barely able to buy food and groceries and pay for a used automobile and maybe a home and sometimes even a trailer for their families to live in. The only hope they have is for Social Security to stay intact. The fear that will be privatized is a greater fear than the anger that we saw 2 years ago. The fear that we may lose Medicare, that we may get a voucher to pay for our Medicare. I'm 68 years old. I'll be 69 years young on September the 13th. Can you imagine me walking into an insurance company saying, I want to buy insurance coverage for myself? It cost me $5,000 a month. Wouldn't it? For a family? We pay $1,500 to $2,000 a month now for insurance for families. There's no way that a voucher or privatizing Medicare can work. And I think the fear of what this group will do, not what they will do, what they have said they intend to do if they're elected. I think the fear that we may lose public education, that will be privatized with vouchers and charter schools will become the norm. We had those many years ago, before the Depression in 1929. Public education became what provided the masses, you and me in this room, with an opportunity to get a good education. And so I think the fear that we may lose Social Security, and I'm not, a lot of folks, so you folks always talk about this. Before, there have been those who talked about doing it. These two folks intend to do it if they're elected. There is a difference. And this election cycle will either take us back to where we were for the 60 or 70 years before Roosevelt was elected in 1932, or it will keep up what has made America great, the safety nets that we provided. the public education that we all have been able to have. So to you I say today, anger is still there. They have to own their anger. But the fear factor that we have today, I think will bring about a great election for Obama and for Biden and for many Democrats all across this nation. Because all of a sudden folks are waking up and realizing we've got it better off. We're better off and we've got it better than we've ever had it under any Republican who's ever been elected president of this country. It has been a pleasure for me to have served for 8 years in the U.S. House, for serving for 6 years in the Senate and 2 terms in the State House of Representatives, and mayor of my little town called Byrdstown, Tennessee. You all have been very kind to me over the years, and I look forward to continue working as a Democrat with Democrats across this state. Let's have a great convention, go back to Tennessee, and let's surprise and prove to folks all across the nation that Tennessee is not a red state. We're a red, white, and blue state. Let's elect Obama in Tennessee.